Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in every person's life when they are faced with a painful truth. Something they desire, perhaps love, opportunity, or recognition, remains just out of reach. And in that moment, they are confronted with a choice. Will they chase after it, diminish themselves in pursuit of something that resists them, or will they stand firm, dignified, and resolute in their faith? You see, a strong person does not chase. She does not beg. She does not plead for validation from those who fail to see her worth. Why? Because she understands something fundamental. Her value is not dependent on external approval, nor is it determined by whether another person chooses to acknowledge it. Self-respect is the foundation upon which a meaningful and fulfilling life is built. It is not a luxury, nor is it something to be compromised for the sake of temporary validation or fleeting affection. It is the essential core of a person's character, the very thing that determines how they will navigate the world, how they will allow themselves to be treated, and what kind of life they will ultimately create for themselves. When someone engages in chasing, whether it be after people, opportunities, or approval, they inadvertently signal to the world that they do not fully recognize their own worth. Because think about it logically. If you had something of immense value, something rare and extraordinary, would you ever feel the need to convince someone else of its worth? Would a diamond plead to be recognized as precious? Would a masterpiece beg for admiration? No. Its value is inherent, self-evident, and undeniable. The same applies to human beings. A person who understands their own worth does not need to prove it to others, nor do they need to seek constant reassurance that they are enough. They simply are. Chasing after someone, whether in the realm of relationships, friendships, or career ambitions, often comes from a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. It is a symptom of the belief that somehow one is not enough as they are, and so they run, they overextend themselves, they bend, they adjust, they become smaller versions of themselves in an attempt to fit into the mold that they believe will be accepted. But here's the painful truth. When you chase something or someone, you are putting yourself in a lower position, an inferior stance. You are allowing someone else, perhaps even something unworthy, to dictate your value. And that is one of the most dangerous positions a person can place themselves in. Now, let's examine the alternative. A person who does not chase, a person who understands that their worth is not up for negotiation. This kind of individual walks through life with an undeniable sense of presence. They do not beg for attention because they know that the right people, the right opportunities, and the right circumstances will naturally gravitate towards them. And they know this not out of arrogance, but out of a deep, unwavering confidence in their own value. And this confidence is not built overnight. It requires discipline. It requires introspection. It requires the willingness to look in the mirror and ask the hard questions. Am I living in a way that reflects my worth? Do I carry myself with the dignity I expect others to recognize? Or am I outsourcing my validation to those who do not have the capacity to see me for who I truly am? You see, the world responds to how you treat yourself. People take cues from the way you present yourself, from the standards you set, from the energy you project. If you demonstrate self-respect, others will be inclined to respect you as well. But if you behave as though you are desperate for approval, if you make it clear that you will tolerate being undervalued or ignored, then that is precisely how you will be treated. Consider this in the context of relationships. A woman who chases after a man, who begs for his attention, who constantly seeks his validation. What is she communicating? She is saying, in essence, I do not believe I am worthy of your affection unless I work for it, unless I prove myself, unless I mold myself into whatever it is you desire. And in doing so, she relinquishes her power. She places herself in a position of dependence, and she forfeits the natural dynamic of mutual respect that healthy relationships require. Now, contrast this with a woman who moves with quiet confidence. She does not beg, she does not plead, she does not diminish herself in the hopes that someone will finally see her. Instead, she knows that her presence is a privilege. She knows that she is bringing something of value to the table, not just externally, but internally through her character, her wisdom, her depth. And because of this, she does not fear rejection. She does not need to cling because she understands that what is meant for her will recognize her, and what does not recognize her was never meant for her to begin with. This principle applies beyond relationships, in the professional world, in friendships, in every area of life. People who command respect do not do so by pleading for it. They do so by embodying it, by maintaining boundaries, by knowing when to walk away from situations that undermine their dignity, by choosing growth over attachment, peace over desperation, and faith over fear. And here's where the element of trust comes into play. Because to stop chasing, to stop begging, to stop seeking external validation, this requires faith. Faith that you do not need to force what is meant for you. Faith that walking away from something that does not value you will not leave you empty, but will make space for something greater. Faith that your self-worth is not determined by whether or not another person chooses to acknowledge it. This kind of trust is not easy. It demands courage, it demands patience, it demands the willingness to endure temporary loneliness rather than settle for something that does not align with your highest self. But the rewards of this mindset are immeasurable, because once you cultivate true self-respect, you will never again feel the need to chase. Instead, you will attract. You will magnetize the right people, the right opportunities, the right circumstances, not through force, but through sheer authenticity. So the question remains, will you continue to chase, to beg, to compromise your dignity for the sake of temporary validation? Or will you stand firm in your worth, trust the process, and move forward with confidence? The choice is yours, and the way you choose will determine the quality of the life you lead. Trusting in God's plan is not a passive resignation to fate. It is an active, disciplined commitment to faith, wisdom, and resilience. It is the understanding that despite our limited perspective, there is a larger order to life, one that we are often too impatient, too fearful, or too prideful to fully comprehend. And because of this, we resist, we cling, we try to force outcomes that are not meant for us, believing that our own will is superior to the wisdom of the divine. But time and time again, life proves otherwise. There is a profound peace that comes with trusting in God's timing. This trust is not blind optimism, nor is it naive hope. It is built on the recognition that when something is truly meant for you, it will not require desperation or manipulation. It will not require you to chase endlessly or to beg for it to remain in your life. Instead, it will unfold naturally, without excessive force or struggle. That is not to say life will be without hardship. Far from it. But there is a stark difference between fighting for something that is part of your purpose and desperately clinging to something that is pulling away from you. One of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that control equates to security. They believe that if they try hard enough, if they push forcefully enough, they can shape the world according to their desires. And while effort, discipline, and strategy are all necessary components of success, there is a fine line between persistence and resistance. When something is slipping away, whether it be a relationship, an opportunity, or a specific outcome, one must ask, am I losing this because I have not done my part? Or am I losing this because it was never truly mine to begin with? Trusting in God means recognizing that some losses are not punishments but protections. Sometimes the very thing we are fighting to keep is the very thing that is standing in the way of something greater. And yet, in our human impatience, we resist this idea. We question, we complain, we lament the unfairness of it all. We believe that because we want something deeply, we are entitled to it. But life does not operate on entitlement. It operates on alignment. If something is truly meant for you, it will fit. It will resonate. It will bring you growth, not just comfort. And if it does not do these things, then its absence is a necessary redirection, not a cruel deprivation. To trust God is to let go of the illusion of control while still embracing responsibility. It is not an excuse for inaction, nor is it a justification for complacency. On the contrary, true faith demands action. It requires a person to do their part, to prepare, to learn, to grow, to be ready for the things they are asking for. Many people claim to trust God, yet they act in ways that contradict this trust. They chase after people who do not reciprocate their efforts. They hold on to relationships that have long since run their course. They exhaust themselves trying to prove their worth to those who are incapable of seeing it. This is not faith. This is fear disguised as persistence. Faith means standing firm in the belief that what is meant for you will not require you to betray yourself to obtain it. It means having the courage to walk away from situations that drain you, knowing that by doing so, you are making space for something far better. It means refusing to beg for a seat at a table where you were never meant to sit. And above all, it means understanding that rejection is not always a loss. It is often a redirection towards something far greater than you had initially envisioned. Consider the example of a woman who places her trust in God instead of seeking validation from others. She does not chase after a love that refuses to see her value. She does not plead for opportunities that continually slip from her grasp. She does not measure her worth based on the temporary affections of those who fail to recognize her essence. Instead, she moves with quiet confidence, knowing that what is meant for her will come, not through force, but through divine alignment. And in doing so, she avoids the emotional exhaustion that comes from constantly trying to control outcomes that are beyond her power. This kind of trust requires patience, and patience is one of the rarest virtues in today's world. We live in an age of instant gratification where waiting is seen as a weakness and perseverance is mistaken for stubbornness. But spiritual maturity is recognizing that not everything will happen on your timeline. Some doors will remain closed for a season, not because they are locked forever, but because you are not yet prepared to walk through them. Other doors will close permanently, not as a punishment, but as an act of divine protection. The question is whether you will trust this process or fight against it in frustration. The irony is that the very moment a person stops chasing, stops begging, stops resisting, their life begins to change. Because by letting go of what was never meant for them, they free themselves to receive what was always destined to be theirs. But this is where true discipline comes in. It is easy to say, I trust God when everything is going well. It is much harder to hold on to that trust when things are falling apart, when prayers seem unanswered, when life feels unfair. That is when faith is tested. That is when true trust is revealed. There is no greater strength than the ability to walk away from what does not serve you, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in peace. A peace that comes from knowing that nothing truly good, nothing truly meant for you will ever require you to become less of yourself in order to obtain it. A peace that allows you to move forward unshaken by temporary losses, because you understand that every ending is simply the beginning of something better. So the choice is yours. You can live in a constant state of resistance, trying to force outcomes that were never meant to be, or you can surrender, not in weakness, but in wisdom. You can trust that God's plan, while not always immediately clear, is far greater than anything you could orchestrate on your own. And when you truly embrace that trust, you will find that life becomes infinitely lighter, not because it is without challenges, but because you are no longer carrying burdens that were never yours to hold in the first place. Personal responsibility is the cornerstone of a meaningful life. It is the foundation upon which all progress, all fulfillment, and all true self-respect are built. Without it, a person becomes a victim of their circumstances, trapped in a cycle of dependence, waiting for external forces to dictate their path. But with it, an individual takes ownership of their actions, their choices, and ultimately their future. The difference between those who thrive and those who remain stagnant is not luck, nor is it fate. It is the willingness or the refusal to accept responsibility for one's own life. Many people find themselves chasing things that do not belong to them, not because they truly desire them, but because they have not taken the time to cultivate their own sense of purpose. They believe that happiness, fulfillment, or success lies in the hands of another person, a job, a title, or an external achievement, and so they chase. They beg. They grasp at relationships that drain them, careers that do not align with their strengths, and validation from people who do not truly see them. And in doing so, they abandon the most fundamental truth of all, that they are the architects of their own lives. To take personal responsibility means to shift the focus inward. It means asking the difficult questions. Am I living in alignment with my values? Am I building the kind of life that reflects my potential? Or am I merely reacting to the world around me, waiting for external circumstances to shape my destiny? These are not comfortable questions, but they are necessary ones, because until a person takes full responsibility for their life, they will always be at the mercy of forces beyond their control. Responsibility is not about blame, it is about power. When someone refuses to take responsibility, they surrender their power to others. They become dependent on whether or not someone loves them, whether or not an opportunity is given to them, whether or not life unfolds in their favor. And when things do not go as planned, they fall into despair because they have placed their happiness in the hands of forces they cannot control. But a responsible person sees things differently. They understand that while they may not control every event in their life, they do control how they respond. They do control how they grow from setbacks. They do control whether they remain stuck or whether they move forward. This is why a person who takes responsibility does not chase. They do not beg for relationships to work. They do not cling to situations that do not serve them, because they understand that their happiness, their growth, and their success are not dependent on external validation. Instead, they build themselves into the kind of person who naturally attracts the right opportunities, the right people, and the right circumstance. They do not waste time lamenting what was lost. They focus on creating what is next. There is an unfortunate belief in today's culture that happiness is something that happens to you rather than something that you must cultivate. This belief keeps people stuck in cycles of waiting for love, waiting for a break, waiting for someone to recognize their worth. But waiting is a passive state, and personal responsibility is about action. It is about recognizing that no one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you the life you dream of, and no one else is responsible for your happiness except you. Taking responsibility means understanding that pain is not an excuse to remain stuck. Many people go through heartbreak, disappointment, and failure, and instead of using those experiences as fuel for growth, they use them as justification for inaction. They tell themselves that because they have suffered, they are now entitled to comfort, to sympathy, to a life free from further struggle. But this mindset is a trap. The truth is that everyone faces hardship. Everyone experiences rejection. Everyone has moments of despair. What separates those who rise from those who remain stuck is their response to that pain. Will they allow it to define them, or will they use it as a stepping stone towards something greater? A person who truly takes responsibility for their life does not waste time on things that are not meant for them. They do not chase after people who are indifferent to their presence. They do not beg for attention, for love, or for validation. They understand that their energy is valuable, and they refuse to spend it on things that do not contribute to their growth. Instead, they focus on becoming stronger, wiser, and more disciplined. They develop skills, they build resilience, they refine their character, and in doing so, they naturally attract the kind of life that others desperately chase. But responsibility is not always comfortable. It requires a person to face their own shortcomings. It requires them to admit when they have made mistakes, when they have allowed themselves to be led by fear rather than wisdom, when they have chosen comfort over growth. And this is difficult because it is far easier to blame others than it is to hold oneself accountable. It is far easier to say, that person broke me, than to say, I allowed myself to stay in a situation that was not serving me. It is far easier to say I was never given the opportunity than to say I did not fully prepare myself for success. But taking responsibility means embracing these hard truths, because only by doing so can one truly change. This is the difference between those who live with purpose and those who remain lost. Those who take responsibility for their lives do not waste time waiting for things to change. They change themselves. They do not beg for a different reality. They create one. And because of this, they move through life with a quiet confidence. They do not need to chase or plead because they know that they are capable of building something better. So the question remains, will you continue to seek validation from others, hoping that someone else will recognize your worth? Or will you take full responsibility for your life, your growth, and your future? The answer to that question will determine everything, because at the end of the day, no one else can do it for you. No one else can build the life you want, and no one else is responsible for your happiness. That responsibility belongs to you alone. And once you fully embrace that truth, you will never again feel the need to chase. Instead, you will move forward with purpose, with strength, and with the unwavering confidence that comes from knowing that your destiny is in your own hands. Walking away from situations that do not serve you is not an act of weakness, it is an act of strength. It requires an immense amount of discipline, self-respect, and wisdom to recognize when something no longer aligns with your values, your growth, or your well-being. Many people remain stuck in toxic relationships, stagnant careers, and self-destructive cycles because they fear the unknown more than they fear the damage being done to them by staying. They convince themselves that holding on is a sign of loyalty, persistence, or love, when in reality, it is often a sign of insecurity, fear, or an inability to trust in the bigger picture. The ability to walk away is rooted in self-awareness. It demands an honest evaluation of your circumstances and the courage to accept hard truths. Too many people cling to situations that drain them because they have convinced themselves that if they just try a little harder, if they just give a little more, if they just wait a little longer, things will change. But here's the truth. If something is not meant for you, no amount of effort will make it right. You cannot force someone to love you. You cannot force a toxic environment to become healthy. You cannot force an opportunity to be yours if it was never meant to fit into your journey. And yet people chase. They chase because they believe their happiness depends on something outside of themselves. They beg because they do not trust that something better is ahead. They hold on to things that hurt them because they fear that letting go will leave them empty. But this fear is an illusion. In reality, walking away from what is wrong for you is the very thing that opens the door to what is right. Holding on to something that does not serve you does not make you stronger. It makes you smaller. It limits your potential, drains your energy, and keeps you trapped in a cycle of frustration and disappointment. When you develop the strength to walk away, you reclaim your power. You signal to yourself and to the world that you will not settle for less than you deserve. You reinforce the idea that your peace, your growth, and your purpose matter more than temporary comfort or validation. This does not mean that walking away is easy. It is often painful, especially when you have invested time, energy, and emotion into something. But what is more painful in the long run is staying in a situation that diminishes you. Many people struggle to leave unhealthy situations because they are attached to the idea of what could be. They are in love with potential, not reality. They see glimpses of what something might become if only the circumstances were different. And so they stay, waiting for change, hoping that one day things will align the way they wish they would. But potential is not enough. The reality of a situation is what must be evaluated, not the fantasy of what it could be. If a relationship is built on inconsistency, if an opportunity constantly makes you doubt yourself, if a situation forces you to compromise your values, then no amount of hope will transform it into something healthy. You must be willing to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Walking away also requires trust. Trust in your ability to rebuild. Trust that what is meant for you will not require you to suffer endlessly in order to keep it. There is a common misconception that leaving means giving up, but there is a profound difference between giving up and letting go. Giving up is rooted in fear, but letting go is rooted in wisdom. It is the recognition that staying in a situation that no longer aligns with who you are is a greater loss than walking away from it. And there is something powerful that happens when you choose to walk away from the wrong things. You make space, you open yourself up to new possibilities, you clear the path for better relationships, healthier environments, and more fulfilling opportunities. But this can only happen if you are willing to release what is no longer serving you. Too often, people delay their own growth because they are afraid to close a door. But sometimes a door must be closed before the right one can open. This is not about pride. It is not about proving a point or trying to make someone else realize your worth. It is about self-respect. It is about understanding that you are responsible for protecting your own energy, your own peace, and your own growth. If a situation is draining you, if it is causing you to question your own value, if it is preventing you from becoming the person you are meant to be, then walking away is not an option. It is a necessity. And the truth is, people who respect themselves do not tolerate what is beneath them. They do not stay where they are not valued. They do not lower their standards in the hope that someone or something will finally see their worth. They walk away, not because they are heartless or indifferent, but because they understand that holding on to the wrong thing only delays the arrival of the right thing. This is why walking away is one of the most powerful acts of self-love a person can engage in. It is a declaration that you will no longer entertain anything that does not align with your highest self. It is an act of faith, an act of courage, and an act of wisdom. It is the understanding that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting for something to work, but from having the strength to walk away when it doesn't. So many people fear that leaving means losing, but in reality, staying in the wrong situation is the true loss. Staying where you are not valued is the true defeat. Staying in a space that does not nurture your growth is what truly robs you of the life you were meant to live. So ask yourself, am I holding on to something that is holding me back? Am I staying in a situation out of fear rather than true fulfillment? Am I chasing something that is running from me instead of allowing myself to attract what is meant for me? These are difficult questions, but they are necessary ones, because the moment you decide to walk away from what does not serve you, you free yourself. You step into your power. You become the kind of person who no longer begs, no longer chases, no longer clings to things that are not meant for them. Instead, you move forward with grace, with confidence, and with the unshakable belief that you deserve better. And when you carry yourself in that way, you will find that life responds in kind. What is truly meant for you will recognize you, and you will never have to force it. Moving forward with faith is not simply about walking away from what no longer serves you. It is about stepping into something greater with conviction, courage, and trust. It is about understanding that life is not meant to be spent clinging to the past, nor is it meant to be lived in a constant state of fear about the future. Instead, it requires a mindset that is rooted in both wisdom and action. It demands that you place your trust in something beyond yourself while simultaneously taking responsibility for the steps you must take to move toward your purpose. Many people struggle to move forward because they are afraid. They are afraid of the unknown, afraid of making mistakes, afraid that what they leave behind might have been the best they will ever have. Fear keeps them stagnant. It convinces them that staying where they are, no matter how unfulfilling, is safer than stepping into the uncertainty of what comes next. But the reality is that life does not reward stagnation. Life rewards those who are willing to move forward, even when the path is unclear. It rewards those who have the courage to trust that what is ahead is greater than what is behind. Faith is not about wishful thinking. It is not about sitting idly by and hoping that everything falls into place without effort. Faith is about action. It is about making choices that align with your values. even when you cannot yet see the full outcome. It is about believing that if you do the right things, if you stay true to your principles, and if you refuse to settle for less than you deserve, then life will unfold in ways that are beyond what you could have orchestrated on your own. One of the greatest challenges in moving forward is the temptation to look back. So many people leave situations that no longer serve them, only to second guess themselves when the journey ahead becomes difficult. They remember only the good moments of what they left behind, forgetting the pain, the exhaustion, and the ways in which that situation was stifling their growth. This is why faith is so essential, because faith keeps you focused on the future rather than trapped in the past. Faith reminds you that what is ahead is meant for you, while what is behind has already served its purpose. Moving forward also requires patience. In today's world, where instant gratification is the norm, people often expect immediate rewards for their efforts. They believe that the moment they choose to walk away from something toxic, something better should instantly replace it. And when that doesn't happen, they begin to doubt their decision. But life does not work that way. There are seasons of waiting, seasons of preparation, seasons where you must trust that even though you cannot yet see the fruits of your choices, they are being cultivated beneath the surface. This is where discipline comes in. Moving forward with faith does not mean sitting back and waiting for opportunities to fall into your lap. It means continuing to build yourself, to refine your character, to develop the skills, the mindset, and the resilience necessary to step into the future you are meant to have. It means preparing for what you are praying for. Too many people say they trust in God's plan, but their actions do not reflect that trust. They ask for new opportunities, but do not equip themselves to handle them. They ask for better relationships, but do not work on becoming better themselves. True faith requires both trust and preparation. It requires you to act as if the life you desire is already on its way, because in doing so, you align yourself with that very future. Another challenge people face when moving forward is the opinions of others. Not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will support your decision to walk away from what no longer serves you. Some will question you, some will doubt you, and some will try to pull you back into the very situations you have worked so hard to leave behind. But moving forward with faith means understanding that your path is not meant to be validated by everyone. It means having the strength to stand firm in your choices, even when others do not understand them. The truth is, not everyone will see what you see. Not everyone will understand why you had to leave certain people behind, why you had to turn down certain opportunities, why you had to step away from situations that looked fine on the surface but were draining your spirit underneath. That is okay. Your journey is yours, and your faith must be stronger than the noise around you. One of the most powerful aspects of moving forward with faith is the realization that you are not starting over. You are starting from experience. Everything you have been through, every loss, every setback, every disappointment has given you something valuable. It has taught you lessons. It has shaped your character, and it has prepared you for what is next. This is why you must never see walking away as a failure. It is not a loss. It is a redirection. It is not an ending, it is a new beginning. And when you embrace this perspective, you realize that every closed door is simply making way for the right one to open. Moving forward with faith also requires gratitude. It is easy to become bitter when things do not go as planned. It is easy to resent the past, to blame others, to dwell on what went wrong. But faith demands that you shift your perspective. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? Ask, what did this teach me? Instead of focusing on what you lost, focus on what you gained. Because when you approach life with gratitude, you position yourself to receive more. You acknowledge that even the painful experiences had a purpose, and in doing so, you free yourself from the burden of regret. Ultimately, moving forward with faith is about trust, not just trust in God, but trust in yourself. It is about believing that you are capable of handling whatever comes next. It is about knowing that you do not need to chase or beg for what is meant for you. It is about carrying yourself with the quiet confidence that you are on the right path even when the road ahead is unclear. Because when you truly trust in the journey, you stop living in a state of fear. You stop questioning whether you made the right choice. You stop wondering if you should go back to what was familiar but unfulfilling. Instead, you step boldly into the future, knowing that what is ahead is greater than what was left behind. So the question is not whether you will face challenges on this journey. The question is whether you will allow fear to keep you from taking the next step. Will you let the uncertainty of the unknown hold you back? Or will you move forward with faith, knowing that what is meant for you will find you, not because you chased it, not because you begged for it, but because you were willing to trust, to grow, and to prepare yourself for it. That is the choice you must make, and that choice will define the life you create. The essence of this journey is not about chasing, begging, or clinging to what is not meant for you. It is about trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your worth, and trust in God's plan. Life will challenge you, it will test your patience, and it will force you to make difficult decisions. But through it all, you must stand firm in the belief that you are not here to settle for less than you deserve. You are not here to convince anyone of your value, nor are you here to force doors open that were never meant to be yours. Walking away is not a loss, it is a declaration of self-respect. Moving forward is not about forgetting the past, but about choosing to no longer be bound by it. And faith is not a passive hope, it is an active commitment to becoming the person who is ready for what is coming next. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop begging, the moment you trust and move on, you shift from a place of desperation to a place of power. You create space for what is truly aligned with you, and you send a message to yourself and to the world that you refuse to accept anything less than what is meant for you. So do not be afraid to let go. Do not be afraid to walk away. Do not be afraid to trust in the unknown. What is ahead of you is far greater than what is behind you, but you must be willing to move forward with courage, with grace, and with faith. Because in the end, what is truly meant for you will never require you to chase, to beg, or to compromise who you are. It will simply recognize you, align with you, and meet you on the path you were always meant to walk.